all of us. Not just the fortunate few, not just the oil companies and the insurance companies, but we want all of us to succeed. Mr. President, there are people who would come into this state and try to divide us one from the other. On the ballot this November, for example, is an initiative called the Michigan Civil Rights Initiative. It is not civil, it is not right, and it's not who we are as a state. Please give a warm Michigan welcome to President Gov.
The governor has an opponent that says what Michigan needs is a state version of the Bush-Cheney government. And I understand he's been trying to tell you that Michigan somehow all alone, everybody else in America is flourishing. Well, let me tell you what the facts are. This is the first time in history in America, not Michigan, in America, that the working people of this country have increased their productivity 5 years in a row, and average wages have remained flat. It has never happened before. When I was president, we created 50% more jobs nationally in our 8 years than the previous 12 Republican years. Looks like we're going to be at 3 times the record of this 8 years. We moved 100 times as many people out of poverty. Poverty's going up in America again, even though working people are doing better. And one reason is we had 5 times as many fair trade enforcement acts every single year as they had. Don't you listen to these Republicans who want to be senator or governor telling you that if we just had a little more of what they've been dishing out to us for the last 5.5 years in Washington, we would be better off. Just one more bottle of castor oil will rot us out, not get us up. Jennifer Granholm has a good economic plan. I have reviewed it. It's a good plan to diversify the future of the state of Michigan. And I know something about this. I think you know from my 8 years as president, I know a little something about economics. But let me also tell you that I served as a governor the last 10 years of the 12 Reagan-Bush years. And there was not a single year until my last year in office that our unemployment rate was below the national average. Then we led the country in job growth, but it took me 9 long years. You can't just expect a state to turn an economy around overnight when it's being crushed by global and national factors totally beyond its control, getting absolutely no help from the national government. What it's been like to have not the Republicans, a narrow strip of the Republican Party in total control of America's destiny. Just a tiny strip. And let me just tell you, first of all, they honestly believe the greatness of America resides in its wealthy, ultra-conservative elite. And they put one of their number up against Governor Granholm. We believe the greatness of America resides in the middle class. We think it ought to grow every year, it ought to be secure, and it ought to be rewarded. Jennifer Granholm got an economic plan. Her opponent believes everything the other guys have done is right. That's what got us in the fix we're in. It takes time to create a whole new Michigan with new jobs, but you'll do it, and you'll do it quicker than we did because you're bigger and more diverse, and you can do this. But my goodness, you wouldn't want to derail the implementation of this plan to adopt the state version of the Bush-Cheney economic program. You got to help overcome the propaganda campaign. You got to help overcome the propaganda campaign and just say, listen, if you believe that Michigan ought to be a place where everybody has an opportunity, where everybody's expected to be responsible, where we go forward together, you need to vote for the governor, the senator, and against that so-called Civil Rights Amendment. And if you believe that we ought to be governed by a philosophy that's inclusive instead of an ideology that's divisive, that we ought to have arguments instead of attacks, that we ought to look at evidence instead of just assertion, you got to vote for the governor and the senator, and you got to vote against that amendment. If you believe that we can revive the economy and deal with all of our challenges, but only if we do it together, only if everybody pitches in, only if we think about tomorrow, then you got to vote for your governor, your senator, and against that amendment. That's what I want you to do. I ask you to remember that every election is about the future. Go out and tell things like this to your friends and neighbors who aren't here. We can do better. These women have done a good job under exceedingly difficult, burdensome, awful, divisive circumstances. They have carried the burden of deficits they did not create, to show responsibility that others didn't show, to point a path to a future that's better than what we're going through. You got to stick with them. You got to help them, and you got to do it together. God bless you, and thank you.